Hi, I'm Travis here at Elitehaus, and I'm going to take a few minutes to explain the theory behind our training. Before I get into that though, I'd like to talk briefly about puppy selection. A lot of people, when they select their puppies for work, they pick the wrong puppies. Now, when most people for home obedience go look for a pup, they look for the lazy one. They look for the one that's not barking, that's not running around in circles and biting everything. Lazy people tend to want lazy dogs, and that's fine if you just want a dog to lay around the house and to cuddle with you on the couch. Our focus though is to have a dog that will work with you, that will play with you, that will do what you need it to do, whether it be obedience, whether it be tracking, whether it be bite work, search and rescue, things of that nature. Now, understand that even if you do want a home dog, you can get the hyperactive ones. The problem is a lot of people get the hyper dog, they don't know how to channel and focus that energy for something productive, and they get frustrated. But in Elitehaus training, we teach you how to channel that into working drives, how to make that dog use that energy for positive things. So whenever you go to select a puppy or a dog, you want a high energy dog, and you want one that has a lot of play drive or prey drive. How to test this is we often take rags or leather rags or just a dishcloth with us when we go look for a puppy. We dangle the rag and move it across the floor, and we look for the puppies that immediately run for it, that want to attack it and bite it and play with it, tear it up, shake their heads around, things of that nature. So we do this. We also want the dogs, if they're older and they can, we get a squeaky toy or a ball and we throw the ball. We want the dog that will just go crazy over that ball. That's why Elitehaus dogs are amazing dogs that we breed. So if you're looking for a dog with these high drives, check out our pups because they are hand selected for their drives, for their temperament. They're imported or we find them from the States. So we should be the #1 stop that you go to if you're training with us. But if you want to go to a rescue or go somewhere else to look for a dog, that's the key to look for. Now, moving into theory of training, when it comes to the fields of training for dog training, there's two thought processes. One is the 100% positive reward. This is where the clicker training comes in. They click, reward, click, reward, click, reward. Now, the pros of this is you get a really happy and energetic dog. These are the dogs when you say, sit, and their butts hit the floor so fast, their tails are wagging, they look like they're smiling. That's the goodness of it. That's when they love doing the work. The cons of this is when you do 100% positive reinforcement training, it takes a while to really get the end result. Another con is sometimes they learn when you do and don't have a reward. So they'll look at you, say, well, you don't have the reward, so I'm not going to listen. What I'm doing is more important to me than not getting a reward, obviously. Now, the other field of training is the dominance theory. This is where you hear people talk about the alpha complex, where dogs have pack structures and you want to break them down and make them submissive to you. The pros of this is you get a dog to obey you pretty fast. The cons is you get a real unhappy looking dog. You get a broken looking dog, a sad looking dog. Also, you get a dog that may resent you. And I like to talk about, if you go to algebra class and you have a teacher, you've never seen an algebra equation at all in your life, and that teacher walks up and writes a formula on the board, calls you up in front of class, and he says, answer it. You don't know the answer, obviously. You've never seen it before. He gets mad, paddles you, and gives you a day of detention. Now, you can either A, go home really motivated, put your nose in the books, and study super hard, hoping that you don't get paddled or detention again, or you're going to create resentment against that person. And you're going to go back, not know the answer, get paddled harder, more often, more detention for longer periods of time, things like that. You're going to hate that teacher, and you're going to hate algebra probably for the rest of your life. We don't want dogs to feel that way towards us. So what we do is we combine both fields of thought into one theory. In our theory of dog training, we have 3 phases. We have the first phase, which is learning, which is teaching the dog what we're going to be doing. We want to teach the dog how to sit before we start correcting it for not sitting, right? So the first phase is learning. We teach the dog how to sit. The second phase is understanding. That's when we start putting the commands to it. We want the dog to understand what sit is, what those commands are. Once the dog understands all this, Then we start moving into the correction phase, which is the discipline phase. Now they understand what sit is, we're going to start correcting them. Now I can go in the 4 quadrants of training, but to make it really simple, in the first 2 phases, we use 100% positive rewards. In the learning phase, we use the treat to manipulate the dog into a sit down position, things of that nature. Once they get in that position, we say yes, that's our click. A lot of times we're not going to be carrying around clickers everywhere we go, but we always have our mouth, so we can say yes and reward. The dog learns, hey, when I lay down, I get a reward. Then it learns, hey, when I sit, I get a reward. The dog starts understanding the body movements. Now keep in mind, we haven't put a word to that yet. So that's the first phase. The second phase, we use the same reward to teach it the verbal cue. So now we know the dog understands what a down and sit is, he just doesn't know the command to it. So then what we do is we'll say sit, and we'll manipulate the dog into a sit, and we say yes, and we reward. We say down, we manipulate the dog into a down, and we give a reward. So that way the dog builds that connection with rewards with obedience. It doesn't associate corrections with obedience. So then once the dog understands, we say sit, and the dog sits 3 times in a row. We know that dog understands what sit is. That 4th time, if he stops and he doesn't listen, that's simply disobedience. So then we start moving into the discipline phase. That's when we start using corrections. We say sit. The dog sits, yes, reward. The dog doesn't sit, correct it. Move on. Sit. The dog sits, yes, reward. The dog doesn't, correct it. Also in the last phase is where we start putting those rewards farther and farther apart. Our end goal is to have a dog that will work 5 to 10 to 15 minutes straight with 100% obedience without a reward. At the end of the training session, they get the biggest rewards they've ever got. So that way they understand they have to work for it. They have to understand that when they obey us, it's not just for that reward, it's for obedience. Because when we go to a trial and we have to do a full obedience phase, we can't stop every few feet and reward it. We have to wait until after the trial. So we start stretching that out a little bit. So in long story short, our theory is to use positive reinforcement in the beginning and then correction training at the end of training when the dog can associate disobedience with the discipline. So in this video, we're only going to be showing you the first 2 phases, how to manipulate the dog and how to create that reward system. This is for those who are interested in attending our training classes and learning what to do before they come to get a jump start. This will also help with the lazy dogs as well. But please feel free to comment below, email us, or go like our Facebook page at facebook.com/Elitehaus. Enjoy the video and let us know what you think. Hello, my name is Travis Williams. I'm with the Elitehaus. I'm an instructor here, and right now I'm going to cover the equipment that we use for training. The most important thing that we use for training is a reward system. We'll go over later in another video our theory of training, but to start off in the basics, you need treats. This is just a food log. It's a nutritional source of food that we cut up in bite-sized pieces. Now when you do this, you're going to make sure that the pieces are small enough to where the dog is not chomping and it's falling out of their mouth and then they're rooting around their nose on the ground looking for the remnants of it. You want it to be small enough to where they can chew it down in a couple bites and just be done with it. And you don't want it too big that you have to sit there and wait for the dog to finish chewing to continue training. So you have to find that good common balance. And also you want it big enough to be a reward. You don't want it to just be like a sense on the taste and just be, okay, that was it, big deal. You want it to be an actual reward. So this right here is actually Red Barn. It's a food log that you can buy for $6 to $8 depending on where you buy it. And it is a nutritional food source. So you can cut off a chunk of it, depending on the size of your dog obviously, and that could be a full meal. So you can actually turn your training sessions into their meal sessions. And that does a couple different things later on down the road. It really builds value for that. It teaches the dog that you're awesome, that you're a good source of food, and that you should be the focus. So this is the very first important thing. So we like them to be soft. We don't like the hard treats. Like I said, you want to be able to eat it easily and not have to stall training. So bite-sized pieces in a treat. In the foundations of training, in the basics and beginning of training, you also need something to put the treats in while you're training. This is just a shooting vest for shotguns. You can use a hunting vest. You can go online and buy an expensive dog trainer vest, or go to a hardware store and buy a carpenter's apron. These are the little aprons that just have 2 pockets that carpenters wear a lot to hold screws and nails. Just depending, if you're a baller on a budget, that's perfect. This is perfect. I have a lot of hunting vests around the house because I like to hunt, but this is not just, it's not a hunting vest, so I don't have the spot in the back for birds. This is just a good vest. I like to have this because there's a lot of pockets. I keep the treats in one pocket. This pocket I have a long lead, and in this pocket I actually carry a remote for an electric collar for advanced training, which we'll go into in another video on prong collars and electric collars and when to incorporate those into training. But this is perfect to hold this to where the dog doesn't see you have it, so you can just shock them real quick. They look at you, it's not in your hand, so they don't become accustomed to you always having it in your hand and knowing I don't have to listen unless it's in their hand. So the treats and the vest is very important. The next thing, moving to the dogs, is having a good collar. During training, and we'll get more into this later, especially in working dogs, it's important to have a collar that doesn't kill a dog's drive. So you want to have a wide base. This is a really thick one. This is a smaller one that you'll see me use today because we have a small puppy we're working. But normally we'd use a large leather one. And this is not focused on a certain area. So if the dog lunges or if you have to pull back, you're not causing damage to the trachea or anything. This is dissipated to a larger area, and they can actually pull fairly hard without doing any damage. So this is what they'll wear. Later on you'll wear fur savers and things like that, but in the beginning you want them to have a good collar. If you're in home and you're training your dog in the house, having a good leather leash or a lead, 4 to 6 foot is perfect. We always have our dogs on a leash in the beginning of training because that keeps them in the area. If the dog is going to go soil somewhere in the corner, you can grab it, reel them in, and this is very good to have. I prefer leather because leather on skin, you can have a better grip on it. Plus, if the dog is really hauling and you grab hold of a nylon one, it pulls out your hand and you have a burn. So I like a leather one. Today, since we're out in the field, we're going to have a long line, which is also very important. This is a very long line. In the beginning of training, this is very important to have, just simply to keep them in the area. You want to keep your dog engaged and focused on you, which we'll get into later. So this is not using for correction. You're not using the collar or the leash to cause a correction. You're just using this to keep them in the area. So if they bolt away, you're using this to keep them close. So just a quick recap on what we're going to be using in the basics of training is a large collar that does not choke or hurt the dog, and you also want a lead or a leash to keep them close. You want to have something that will allow you to be more hands-free in your training that can hold the treats, and then we go into actually holding the treats themselves. Now, there is a certain way we hold treats. Let me get a piece here. A lot of people, when they feed their dogs, they want to hold it at the very tips of the finger. They hold it like this. The problem is when the dog comes in, they want to bite the fingers to get to the reward, to the treat. This will A, cause the handler discomfort and make you not want to do that. B, to do this, it'll result in people wanting to hold it flat-handed. You can only give a dog it at this point. So we like to have it in our hand and pinched, just like so. By holding it just like so, I could go this way, this way, this way, or that way, and not drop it. So if I want the dog to look up at me, it can take from here. If I want it to look down, I can take it from here. So I like to hold it here, and when the dog comes in to get it, I simply remove my thumb and let them scoop in and take that. So it's real simple to hold it. It doesn't cause any damage or anything to my hand. They move. If they start biting the fingers, then I can say no and then readjust. So this is the way we like to hold our treats. Right here in the crease of the thumb, just like so. When they come in to get it, we move our thumb away and let them remove the treat. So let me go get a puppy and we'll start discussing the basics and the foundations of our training. This is Monty. He's one of our rescues. We're going to be starting him off in obedience training and hopefully work him up into detection work, tracking, and possibly apprehension work. But he hasn't been fed today, which is when you start marker training, you want to kind of hold off on the food a little bit the night before or the morning of. That way they're a little bit hungry and they're focused for the food a little bit. And the treats that we use are a food source. It's not just a treat. You can actually cut off huge sections and feed it as a whole meal itself. So that's what we're going to be using today to get him really focused. And he's, like I said, he's hungry, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I got him on a long line since we're in a field, and hopefully he won't bolt. But Monty. Yes. Yes. And all this is I'm saying yes and then handing it to him. Yes. But I'm not necessarily coming from one hand or the other. I want to change it up so he doesn't get really aware of one certain hand at a time. So, Monty. Yes. Yes. And as you progress with this, it's pretty simple. Do this 2 or 3 times for a meal, and just yes and feed, yes and feed, yes and feed. And then you can add things in like only say yes and feed when he makes eye contact with you. So, Monty. Yes. 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 It's that simple. Just say yes and feed, and usually 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 sessions of this is enough to really get them to understand that yes means a good thing. Yes. Yes. And if you have a new dog, this is also a good way of becoming friends with them, because you're being the provider of their food. Yes. 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 And then once you get done with the marker training, you can start working with luring. Luring is exactly what that is just like casting a fishing line. You're luring him away from where he is. So I go, Monty. Yes. Once he started moving, I marked it and rewarded. Yes. See if he'll go between my legs. Yes. Good boy. Monty. He's a little iffy about that. Yes. Yes. And that's all luring is just taking that few steps and getting him to go. It also teaches them to that you're going to be manipulating them. Eventually down the road, you'll be using this luring to put them in positions such as sit, down, heel. And so if you start that off, they'll get used to you manipulating their movements and positions. So I'm going to work with him for a little bit, and we'll continue this in a little bit. is Arturo. He is one of our board and trained dogs that we're training for bike sports such as PSA or Schutzen. And we've been working a little bit with him. He has a lot of distractions out here. We have some of our dogs out enjoying the weather, so he's got a lot of distractions, but we're going to work with him anyway. There's a lot of food on the ground from the previous trainings, so I'm going to engage him, keep him active with me, focused on me, and do some marking, luring, and engagement. Hey, hey, hey. Yeah, yeah, yes, yes, yep, yes, good boy, yes. Oh, what do I have? Sit. Yes. Yep. Sit. Yes. Here. Sit. Yes. Good boy. Good boy. Oh, what do I got? Sit. Down. Yes. Good boy. Here. Yes, good. Yes, good. So here all I was doing is waiting for him to look up at me, make eye contact, once again keeping that focus. But you can see how fun and easy marking, luring, and training is. In the road. Oh. You put the short leash on him, or? Just let me know when you're done.